Citizenship Act. We say good morning to Representative Brian Bilbray this morning to talk about these issues. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Bridget.
Welcome back to San Diego.
Great to be home.
Okay, should we start with the Birthright Citizenship Act? Tell us about what's happening with that.
Well, what's happening is now you've got groups that are actually bringing tourists in to have children. One company in New York is for $45,000. They'll get you into the country. They'll keep you here until you can, the mother can deliver, and guarantees basically selling citizenship. This was never the requirement under the Constitution. It was only those who are permanent legal residents, those who are obligated to serve in the military or could be tried for treason. And tourists can't do that. In fact, diplomats' children don't get automatic citizenship. In fact, one thing most Americans don't realize, even American Indians, because they couldn't be drafted, were not given automatic citizenship. So this is a real issue that's been sort of ignored since the 40s because nobody thought it was a big deal. It's becoming a big deal, a very big deal. I guess the example was that terrorist that was caught in the Middle East who said, I'm a U.S. citizen because I was born in the United States when my parents were Saudi Arabian tourists. Well, the parents couldn't be required to serve the American government in a time of war. That's what's subject to the jurisdiction. A lot of people say, oh, if you're born in U.S., you're a U.S. citizen. No, no. If you're born in the U.S. and your parents were subject to at the time of birth, then you are a U.S. citizen.
Now, you're obviously going to get a lot of opposition to this, and you have already. I mean, it's common knowledge here that often illegal immigrants come up, have their child here, and that child becomes a U.S. citizen. Is that part of the argument here? Is that part of what
yeah. In fact, one of the things that here is in this, Nathan Deal has picked up the bill that I had in the 90s, that if you're if a parent is a U.S. citizen, if your parents are permanent resident aliens, but even if your parents are illegal, but if they're in the military, they qualify because even illegals can be subject to the jurisdiction. If they've signed up to the military, then they are required to serve. Then they have obligations. Mm-hmm. Those obligations are what earns the child the right of citizenship. As the British common law in 1608 says, it's neither the soil nor the climate, but the loyalty and the obedience that makes a subject born. So your parents earn this right for you. It's not just because you're on U.S. soil. Again, if that was true, why weren't American Indians given automatic citizenship? And if we're not going to give automatic citizenship under the 14th Amendment to Native Americans, then how do you give it to tourists or somebody who is illegally here? And that's common sense and it's common decency.
Now, so what are you hoping to do with this act? What are you hoping to achieve?
Basically, what you want to do is you want to clarify what is subject to the jurisdiction, what that conditioning clause is, and go back to the original concept. And that way you stop loopholes to where rich people can pay $45,000 to come to the United States to give birth. Or somebody, a lot of times we talk about illegals, but we don't talk about people that have border crossing cards who come over, get free health care, they may be very wealthy, get automatic citizenship, and then actually even can apply for benefits, welfare benefits for that child, even though they may be wealthy in another country, because technically in the U.S. they have no money. These are these loopholes that people are taking advantage of, and this is the kind of thing they want Washington to go back and correct these mistakes that have been made or things that have been ignored for too long. And the whole issue with this is federal government, why don't you take the time to take care of the things that are your responsibility on the Constitution rather than a lot of other stuff that we've been talking about?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say some of the issues that may come to light is a lot of people who are coming over here, maybe they're working with a card or they have the ability to work here and they do, have children, then those children get into the school system.
Right.
The citizenship is part of what protects their children while they're here, and they're working here legally, even though they may not be here.
Even if they're a green card, they're not a permanent resident alien. They cannot be forced to register for the draft like permanent resident aliens do. They don't have the obligation not to conspire against the United States. They still are not obligated.
So what happens to those children?
Those children are automatically the citizen of the country of the parent where they live. So the fact is that it's like you and I, if you go over to another country, if you went to France and you had a child there, that child's not French. That child is American because as a tourist, you were not a French and did not have obligations to France, so obligations from France to you and your children don't apply. It's sort of a two-way street.
How does the health care debate enter? I mean, it seems like it has so many tentacles.
One of the things about the health care debate that really came down to it, was the fact this argument, illegals will not have benefits in this. The trouble is they do not use what's called a SAVE verification, the secure alien verification system. So if you don't check, everybody knows, especially in San Diego, Diego, you've got to check that people are legally in the country if you're going to give them benefits to make sure they don't. You can say, well, we don't want people illegally in the country to get these benefits, but we're not going to require any check, any verification. You and I know that is a wink and a nod and a way to be able to get people into the system. So we actually have a situation where somebody legally here is not obligated to pay the tax or to have insurance. But because we don't require any verification of legal status, you now are going to have the only people who do not have to buy insurance in America to live here are illegals, but they will be able to get into the system because there's no checks of verification.
So you want to see that change?
Oh, you've got to change it. Why would you do it for every other program in the United States now? But you require that you verify now. But why did you not include it in this bill? And it's because there were backroom deals made. And this is going to be an interesting thing here. This is why we want these processes out public. You're going to hear now over the next year all of these backroom little deals that was made with this company or this group or this group. And it's all coming out now, and people are starting to say, this is what the worst of what we perceive Washington be. This is why we need to do more things out in open. Take time to publish these issues. Give the public, months or weeks, not hours and days to refer these things, because these are huge bills, 1,300 pages. You can imagine what's hidden in here.
Such a complicated process, and you can't do it overnight. It is going to take a long time.
I mean, as a mayor, I would not allow a city manager to give me something and say, you're going to vote on it tomorrow. I said, whoa, we have hearings. We have ways to process. If I wouldn't allow a city manager to do that, why are we allowing the federal government to do it?
All right, Congressman Brian Bilbray, thanks for being here.
Bridget, as always, thank you.
All right.